Good morning, everybody. Welcome in. This is Driving Me Nuts Talk, Dr. High.
Well, some technical difficulties this morning,
You're not
but these
echoing.
things
See?
happen from time to time. So, we don't understand what happened,
I
but
have
we've
no idea. And now I can't find Dr. Harris.
So,
Dr. Harris, if
hopefully,
you're out there, give me your email or something. Mississippi's
we'll get them
busy.
back
And I
up here
don't have
somehow, which would be nice. But until then,
or your Facebook Messenger, find tie dye _T.
technical. Why was it Mississippi that you can that? How did you send them the invite this morning?
Mississippi did it all this morning. She came in. She said, I'm going to send them the email. Everything's going to be set up and ready for you. I said, all right, cool. And then
what device did she use?
the computer. We do everything on the computer. No, not finally. We still can't get Dr. Harris. I don't even know where he is.
If you go in your computer, in your emails, and you go in to check your sent emails, it'll be right there.
Yes, I did that already. I sent it to him.
You sent him a new one.
Yes. Well, I sent him. Yeah, I sent
a new link, right? Yeah, because the link was no good after we signed off. That link's
well, yeah, that's the problem. Is I tried to send him a new link, but
he would have had to go back in his email to check that old link, right, to try and come back in, and hopefully.
What I have to do is probably go to Mrs. Hippie's email and see if I can find it on, because she probably sent it from her email.
Oh, you couldn't find it in yours?
No.
Oh, so go, do that. That's exactly what you should do.
Yeah. You think it's that fucking easy?
It is.
I can't even find her email. Everything in her email looks like to be mine. Why do you have my email, Mississippi?
Well, it'll be as simple as being in the sent file.
Oh, maybe it's here. It might be in here. For fuck's sake.
Shouldn't be too hard to find. How are you, Marcel? You're being released today. That's some great news. Oh, we're happy to hear that. Have they had any success with you? And while I'm at it, let me say good morning to Kelly and Lori and Steve. There's our man Robert over there in the UK. How you doing this morning? We have our Facebook user. Everybody's with us. This is nice.
I'm done.
I quit. Stressful this morning, but
oh yeah, I'm done.
No.
Nope.
Not much we can do about it.
Let's talk about weed. So fucking mad. I'm so mad right now. So mad. Stupid echo.
You know what?
I can't figure out how to send him another invite, and Mrs. Hippie is trying to do work somewhere, and it's not
in a
working.
Meeting.
She's in a meeting. She's busy. I don't want to interrupt. I mean, I already interrupt her. She yelled at me. And she sent the email, and I can't get into her email. It says verify, and I don't know her password.
What are you going to do? Let's see if we got any interesting articles this morning.
I had articles, everything.
What, you were going to ask the doctor articles?
No, I had all the different symptoms and things that you are able to get medicine for.
Okay.
A list of 30 different items that you're able to get the card for and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Just different things that we might have talked about that I could bring up. I don't know. I was trying to be prepared.
Prepared is good.
Dr. Harris, if you're out there, please.
Somewhere in the ether.
In the world out there. He's out there somewhere. He's probably looking for us. This is going to be so embarrassing the next time I see him.
No. It's just you didn't send the email, so you didn't have his email address. Does Mississippi always contact him? You don't have no business card or none of that for me?
Oh, yeah. It's been 6 years. She's been, she sets up the appointment. I talk to the doctor. I hang up.
Is she listed on your medical card? Is she listed as a doctor on your medical card? No.
No.
Well, I don't know.
Not even listed on my marijuana card. Is that what you meant on
Well,
my medical card?
Yeah,
Oh,
that's what I meant. Yeah, as a prescribing physician,
this is horrible. Horrible. It's been a horrible day. I woke up in a bad mood. I got up on the wrong side of the couch.
It's because you're stressing over your meds.
My
It's the
meds are
psychological
gone.
thing, right?
My
You're
vape is
concerned
gone.
because you know what's coming if you don't have your medication. You're not
I'm
going to feel
already in
right.
pain. I'm already in pain. Yeah.
It's a stressful thing, a stressful thing, but you will
But
endure.
I was so excited for today, though. Like I wanted this to
Yeah,
happen.
no, I get it. But
I'm
you know what's going to
so
happen?
pissed.
It's
I'm
going to
so
happen.
pissed.
He'll come back. Maybe it'll have to be a week when he's got time again, or whatever the case may be. But he'll come back. He knows that whatever happened, it was really bizarre because we've had some issues with freezing and crap like that. But in the whole time we've been doing this, we never had anything like that happen.
The echo was just so bad. I mean, yesterday afternoon it started, so there's something going on. Like I can't figure it out. Like all my buttons are normal, everything looks normal.
Has the whole family been out of the house all at one time, anytime recently?
In my house,
Yeah.
not usually. Somebody's always home. Usually,
So
it's me.
it's not the FBI sneaking in and putting a bug in your studio.
No. And if they did, they'd be laying on the floor with like bones and stuff hanging out of their legs and stuff. Because my
You
puppy,
never know. They're
my puppy,
sneaky.
my puppy would either be dead or they would have been eaten. So
One or the other,
I probably would have come home to some FBI legs. But I don't know. I don't want to try it. FBI, keep your eyes out for a big tan dog that doesn't like FBI.
You know where you might find Dr. Harris?
In Allentown? In Allentown, Pennsylvania.
In your dashboard for StreamYard, you must have people that you've invited. You must have links to the people you've sent invitations to, no?
Maybe. Where's my dashboard? I don't even have a steering wheel.
Now, let me see if I can find them on Google.
Virtual background, audio, general, my camera, touch up my appearance. Ooh, I didn't know I could do that. I'm going to be looking good tomorrow.
I use it all the time. That's why Raggy's always calling me beautiful.
Oh, now I know.
My appearance.
Invite. I'm going to try to invite. Let's go through Gmail.
Where is he? Allentown?
Yeah. Allentown. It's
Charles Harris, permanently closed.
What? That's not good.
He's aimed420.com, right?
Yeah, am.420, AMI or am420.com. But I need the whole email, not that. I need like
contact.
It's like AMIEE.
AIMMED.
Hold on. AIMM.
Yeah.
Oh, now he came up. There he is. Hold on. Yeah. Hold on. We might be in business.
And I got a phone number.
Oh, I don't want to call him. All right. It says view message sent. Oh, my goodness. I hope it works. If he comes in and he echoes, I'm kicking him out.
I don't know why I didn't think about doing this in the first place. Everybody's fucking online.
You dumbass. I don't know how to work online. I don't know how to work online.
How are you, Andrew?
Good morning, everybody. It's been a very, very, very stressful day. It's only noonish.
Well, you know.
Well, hopefully he didn't go back to patients and he's still looking for us.
Yeah. If not, we can reach out. You can always call him.
Yeah, I'll just blame Mrs. Hippie. It was all her fault. She echoed. It was her fault that we were echoing. She touched something in here when I wasn't looking.
I don't know. Maybe there is a medical device, an echocardiogram in his office.
Oh, yes. Why would he have a cardiogram in there, though? Echo, yes. cardiogram.
Well, I'm saying an echocardiogram, which caused the echo.
Maybe, yes. All right. So,
Right?
Dr. High, what do you do when you're out of your medicine? Do you cry like me?
Yeah, I mean it's a tough situation, right? Like
I'm in the shit, man. I'm screwed until the damn mailman. And I got a drunk mailman. He comes at like 6 o'clock in the afternoon after the day at the bar, throws the mail out the window. You ever seen that movie where I got that dude? He drives right past my house. And he just keeps going. I got to pick up the mail every day. He's always wasted.
See, there was a tavern in the little town where I grew up, and they used to have 2 days of the week. One was 25-cent hot dogs, and one was 50-cent hamburgers, right? And then draft beer was cheap. And back then, like they weren't so stressed about your age, right? It was more about your maturity. So we go there and shoot pool. Have beer when we were still,
don't move.
2 years underage.
Don't move. Dr. Harris is back.
There we go. Nice.
I'm not touching nothing. I'm not talking. I'm just going to add them. Dr. Harris.
How are you?
Gentlemen.
Sorry about that. This has been a really technical challenge.
Yes, my IT department left home when they went to college.
Yes.
My IT department went to work this morning.
Yeah, I don't know how many times I've contacted my children to help me out with something computer related.
Still doing it.
Yeah, I know. I can hear the echo on your end, but if Dr. Harris doesn't hear it, then
I'm not hearing any echo at all.
So I don't know. It's really strange. Do you have your phone open?
Nope. Not me.
Oh, sorry, it's just
No, I don't have any. Only on the computer.
All right, so we'll talk very little and limit Dr. Harris to most of the talk. How's that?
No. I like the back and forth.
Yeah, absolutely. Could you maybe tell the listeners a little bit about your history as a doctor?
Sure.
Before you were working with cannabis, and then the transition.
Sure. I came into this just about 6 years ago. I'm an ER doctor. I've been working in the emergency department for 37 years and just retired a year ago. And about 6 years ago, Pennsylvania started their medical marijuana program. And my wife pointed that out to me and said, maybe we should take a look at it. At that time, I was entirely cannabis naive and was not particularly interested. I spoke with some family members. I had a brother who lived in Colorado and a nephew in California, and asked them some questions about, what their experiences or if they had friends or acquaintances. And they were generally quite positive. So we looked into it further. Pennsylvania requires a 4-hour class for doctors who want to be certifying physicians. And so I took a 4-hour class from a physician in Maine, Dr. Dustin Sulak. And I don't know if you two have heard of Dr. Sulak, but he's a wonderful educator. And his website is healer.com. And it is just chocked full of wonderful information. As you guys both know, the internet has lots and lots of information about medical marijuana, and not all of it is very accurate. So I like to give out the name of that website, healer.com, to my new patients as a good reference for them. So I took a 4-hour class from Dr. Sulak, and it was quite well done. But frankly, at the end of it, I was a little bit hesitant because it seemed too good to be true. And as an emergency physician, I've always been an extremely conservative physician. So I like to practice evidence-based medicine. And, once Dr. Sulak was talking about, how it helped with pain and sleep and other, chronic illnesses. And then he started talking about cancer and how it helps to, improve appetite and help to fight cancer and helps with Crohn's disease and other inflammatory bowel disease. And I began thinking to myself, well, I can't think of it how any one medicine would help all of those different problems.
Right.
Certainly one medicine that can help take away migraine headaches, I can understand that. And another medicine, and that same medicine helps with Crohn's disease, which is a problem of inflammation in the intestines. And my thought was they're entirely unrelated. How could one medicine do both?
It does seem counterintuitive, doesn't it?
It does. And in medicine, we have a couple of old-fashioned words in medicine. One of them is a panacea, and it's used usually in a derogatory way to talk about a medicine that cures everything. And there's an even older word called nostrum, and that's actually the opinion that most doctors have about cannabis. A nostrum is a medicine made up of various ingredients. Most of them are secret ingredients that no one really knows much about, and it literally cures everything. And you think of the old medicine wagons of the Wild West in the 1880s, and the Dr. Feelgood and the magic elixir, which was mostly alcohol and laudanum. And of course, it made you feel really good, but it didn't really cure anything. So
no, it just simply numbed you to whatever was the ailment, right?
Exactly.
Dr. Harris.
Exactly. Yeah.
Do you have speakers on?
No. Yes, I have my computer speakers on low.
Can you turn them off, or will you not be able to hear us?
If I turn them off, I won't be able to hear you.
Right.
That's not going to work.
Yeah, it's just bizarre today, but that's okay. We'll get through it.
Yeah, I don't want to.
Are you getting quite a bit of an echo from me?
It's from us. It's actually from us.
Yeah,
You seem
hippie, so.
But when him and I were sitting here before, we didn't have any echo. As soon as you came in, we got an echo.
Yeah. Blame the new guy. Sure.
No. I would never blame you. You're my favorite doctor in the whole world. Him, you and him.
So
let me see. I do have headphones, but I don't think I can connect the headphones to my computer.
I don't want to have to send you another invite. Hell.
Let me take a look at my headphones and see what they look like.
Because when Dr. Harris talks, we don't have an echo. It's only when you and I are speaking, so we can tolerate it, I think.
Yeah, I'll just shut up. I don't care.
No, I have quite a few connectors here, but nothing that connect my headphone. Let me take one more look in my magic bag.
It's the doctor bag that they come in.
I have all sorts of connectors for this and that, but unfortunately, wait.
Waylon says settings, audio, echo cancellation.
But that might be you.
I'm going to look.
I'm on the track of something here. Oh my gosh. What did you do?
I already had my Waylon.
Yeah, mine on too.
As soon as I hit it, it went off.
That's funny. How are you, Nick?
Hello.
Well,
so I don't know if these are going to connect automatically or not.
Well, we'll find out.
You sound great.
But it's better.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I don't know. Can you guys hear me at all?
Absolutely. Can you hear us?
And I can't hear you whatsoever.
That's not good.
Oh, yeah, because we can hear you, no problem.
All right. I don't think I'm connecting through my headset. No.
All right, just go back to the way we were.
All right.
We're okay. Yeah, so I've always kind of thought, Dr. Nurse, that some of the doctors that are now actively involved in prescribing cannabis kind of came to that because they either encountered somebody in their practice who had decided to include cannabis therapy in their regular treatment regimen for something they had and had an incredible result, which made the doctor really curious about what it was and start to look into it, or somebody like a family member who's used cannabis along with traditional treatments for something they had encountered. Was that the case with you, or was it simply curiosity from hearing you talk about the potential of cannabis in the medical setting?
Well, it was a bit of a combination, but mostly, once I took this 4-hour class and started looking at references, the lecture that I took was quite well referenced. So I started pulling up papers and reviewing the papers, and they were generally really well done and published in prestigious journals, peer-reviewed journals, and some pretty good evidence. And my first thought was, number one, this is quite fascinating, and number two, why don't doctors know all of this? And we don't. Most doctors know zero about medical marijuana, the endocannabinoid system, the effects that cannabis has on the human body, and even the fact that our brains make its own cannabis.
Right. Yeah. Its own cannabinoids. Exactly.
Exactly.
Because I don't have my card yet, Dr. Harris. Where's my cannabis? It's not being produced.
Are they not teaching doctors about the endocannabinoid system currently in medical schools, or is there any movement to educating them towards this physiological?
So I attended a lecture about 3 years ago, and the speaker said that 17% of medical schools have something about the endocannabinoid system on their curriculum. But there wasn't much more in depth than that. So I don't know if it was, including a lecture from somebody who said, oh, everybody's using medical marijuana now, so advise your patients against it. Or if it was an actual lecture or series of lectures talking about the facts about the endocannabinoid system and how phytocannabinoids, marijuana, impacts that, and the different effects that the different strains or different terpenes have on patients' symptoms. So 17%, and that was about 3 years ago. That was right before COVID hit, so it's probably hasn't advanced much since that. I worked in the emergency department that was a medium-sized ER, but we were affiliated with a big hospital on the outskirts of Philadelphia, Abington Hospital, and they were part of the Jefferson Hospital system in Philadelphia. And before I retired, about 3 or 4 months before I retired, I did a grand rounds presentation on medical marijuana, just the kind of the basics. It was a 50-minute presentation, so you can't go in depth, but just to give a basic overview, and it was pretty well received.
I was going to say, how do you find the medical community and doctors? Are they receptive to learning about this? Is there a big stigma within the community that people, kind of still shying away from looking into this deeper?
Yeah, there's a real split. I have about, in our community, and our office, our practice is based out of the Lehigh Valley in eastern Pennsylvania. But we don't have an office anymore. Everybody wanted to do certifications and renewals by telemedicine. So we do telemedicine consults with our patients throughout the state of Pennsylvania. But in the Lehigh Valley, I initially made a push to introduce myself to some of the local family practitioners and a few of the specialists. So I have about a half a dozen doctors that will refer me patients on a regular or semi-regular basis. A couple of family practitioners in particular, because they've seen, really good results with their patients when they, come back and follow up.
Right. How do you find patient level of comfort in approaching doctors speaking about cannabis and their interest in wanting to try and see if they can put their quality of life using it? Are patients becoming still kind of reluctant?
For the most part, they're still quite reluctant. Patients that find us, and when we have our initial consultation to get them certified, and we spend quite a bit of time with our new patients, usually about 30 or 40 minutes. And so I'll frequently ask them, how did they get to us? Because it's not easy to find a cannabis doctor in Pennsylvania. All the state does is they list there's about 1,200 of us, I guess. They just have a list, and there's really nothing else. I think there's a phone number, and that's about it. And especially early on, we would have patients call us, and when we called them back or picked up the phone, they would say, "Oh, thank heavens, I've called 15 doctors on that list, and only 3 of them have returned the phone call, and none of them will see me. You're the first doctor, that's willing to work with us and get us certified."
Well, that's really important for that reason. Gaining access to a physician that will prescribe cannabis has nothing but getting comfortable moving forward, prescriptions that nature, be able to consult the patient is very difficult. So the fact that you're able to do this method is really important. I'm good up. So we've had legal since 2018. We've had legal medical substantially longer than that. And even now, to find a doctor who will write the prescription for you. So even in a legal environment, it's difficult. I approached my family doctor about years ago, asking him to write prescription for cannabis. And he said that the company discouraged them from doing so. Didn't even want them to address it. So it was a bit surprising,
Yeah, surprising and quite dismaying too, I'm sure.
Yes.
Just last fall, Congress passed here in the U.S. Congress passed legislation, and the president signed it into law that made it legal for physicians in the United States to discuss medical marijuana with their patients. So up until November, every patient that I spoke with about medical marijuana, I was breaking federal law. So now I'm allowed to talk with my patients about medical marijuana. It's so frustrating.
I can imagine. Now that you've had the experience, you've got a couple of years in dealing with as your overall impression of the knowledge that you received in that initial 4-hour course proven to be factual, and you're seeing really good people.
Well, the information I received in the initial 4-hour course was brilliant, and I've built on that a lot over the past 6 years now. And 6 years into this, that makes me one of the old guys.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Any other specialty like emergency medicine, 6 years into emergency medicine, I was still kind of a newbie. But 6 years into cannabis, and there's few doctors that have seen, that have had the experiences that I've had and seen the results that we've seen with our patients. So right. I read a lot, and almost everything I read is in regards to cannabis and its effects on the human body and different illnesses that it can be improved. when something new comes along and my patients ask me about it, and unfortunately, I usually have to defer because, for example, Delta 8 THC has become very big here in the U.S.
Yes.
Um, and I'll have patients that, oh, I bought my gummies at the gas station and they're working just fine. I'm going like, well, that's not regulated, tested, approved cannabis. That's
Dr. Harris,
yeah.
do you? I mean, you're in Pennsylvania. You know, you can only take care of people in Pennsylvania, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. I went to a festival a couple weeks ago. I don't know if you heard of it, the Cannabis up here in up by me, I mean, Poconos. There was a woman walking around saying, "Don't go to your doctor anymore. Go to us. We can get you your card for $60." What's that all about?
Well, as soon as the state opened up our Pennsylvania medical marijuana the program, there have been doctors that were just pretty much certifying machines.
I remember.
The probably the two biggest problems with that is that from what I've been told by patients that followed up with us but got certified by some other doctor initially, the two biggest problems were, number one, they didn't require any medical records. So you could just call them and say, yeah, I have terrible back pain, and they would say, okay, here's your card, and which I find quite shady. And the other is that there really wasn't much teaching or follow-up going on. Now, as I said, we spend between Colleen, my wife, who's a cannabis nurse, and myself, we spend 30 or 40 minutes with our new patients. We like to get them a good, some good basic information. At the 1 year follow-up, I still spend another 15 or 20 minutes with patients if they need it. Certainly at the 1 year follow-up, some of my patients say, nope, doing great, still on the same, products and no side effects, and I'm doing fine. And those conversations are 5 minutes at most. But still a significant number of my patients need some direction. They've forgotten some of the things I told them a year ago. So it's good to reiterate things like probably a couple of the things that I hit most frequently are the use of balanced products that have THC and CBD together, a nice 1-to-1 ratio to use for daytime. That's a big one. And then using the longer lasting forms of cannabis, like the capsules or the tinctures, to get longer lasting results. I mean, vaping is amazing because it starts right now. But then in 2 hours, if you're using it for sleep and you go to sleep at 10 and you wake up at 1, that vape is gone. Whereas if it's a tincture or a capsule, that's going to hang around for a good part of the night.
Exactly.
I only asked because I had people approaching me prior to me meeting you, and they, and I said, no, I'm going to go with a real doctor. And then somebody suggested you to me, another client of yours. And so I was lucky enough to get in. I just wanted to know all about them. I heard about those people selling the cards, like the opiates back in the day when the opiate pandemic, they were just handing cards out. Crazy.
Yeah. Yep.
Dr. Hayek has a bunch of questions about your CBD that you just mentioned. I'm just going to shut up.
And if I could just mention one further thing about the kind of certification mills, we'll call them. The way that the Pennsylvania law is set up, I cannot advertise. So I can't put an ad in the paper. I can't put up a billboard. I'm even nervous about my website, but I can't really advertise. Whereas some of these companies that
I see them on billboards down the road.
They're not the doctor. They hire doctors. So they'll put up billboards and have radio spots and, call us and get your card tomorrow. And it's just very frustrating. And I'm sure that a lot of people are, getting their cards, getting some good help at the dispensary, but they're not really getting much in the way of guidance from a physician. Again, a lot of my patients don't need much in the way of guidance, but there's a good substantial portion of patients that they can use some tips and hints, and it really is a good benefit.
Well, I don't want to. Well, I don't want to. I don't want to. Yeah, no. I'll ask you at a later time.
That's funny. So you were talking about ratios, THC and CBD ratios in different products. Do you believe, from your experience, it's more important to use full spectrum extracts in preparations, or are isolated compounds such as a THC distillate and a CBD isolate more effective?
Well, that's a great question, and one of the difficult things for physicians to wrap their head around is the idea of the entourage effect.
Right.
And it's probably one of the main reasons that, in our country, that the FDA is just never, not that in the foreseeable future, they're just not going to get on board with this. The CDC, the DEA, the FDA, all those alphabet soup, they don't know how to deal with a medicine that has other ingredients, that help it along. But when you look at scientific studies and that compare isolated THC to full spectrum THC, in almost every example, the results are significantly, as in statistically significantly better with the full spectrum, product. And, if you're trying to get this approved by the FDA, they would say, well, what are those ingredients?
Right. Well, there's 412 of them. Where do we start?
You'd say, well, it kind of depends on the harvest. Were the buds at the upper branches or the lower branches? We're going to get some different percentages. And if it's, the neighboring plant, it's going to be a whole different profile. So it makes it difficult, even the drift within a particular strain. And each harvest, and Harlequin is one of my favorite products to recommend. And generally, when they harvest Harlequin and make a cartridge, liquid live resin cartridge, it usually comes out a little bit more CBD than THC. Not quite a 1 to 1.5 ratio, certainly not a 1 to 2. But there's some drift on that, and it varies from harvest to harvest, and it's difficult for a fact-based physician to say, well, try this, adjust the dose on your own, and if that doesn't work, try a similar strain. There's nowhere in medicine really that we do much of that.
But cannabis is really unique like that, because you can give the same strain from the same harvest to 10 different patients, and they can all experience it differently. It's the interesting thing about cannabis is it's so individualized in the way we respond to its inclusion, eh?
It really is, and I've got one patient that takes a indica and he lays awake all night and stares at the ceiling. He said, indica does not put me to sleep. A sativa, I'm out like a light. I'm going like, well, physiologically that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But if it helps you, then do that. And my patients who are cannabis naive, especially my generation, they're very skeptical about all of this anyway. And when I say, well, experiment around with doses and strains until you find the ones that work the best, that's not very reassuring to them. So I always try and buffer that by saying, this is okay because cannabis is such a benign medicine. I mean, yes, you can take too much and you can feel very uncomfortable for a few hours, but that's really about it. You could smoke your entire cartridge and you're not going to die from that. You're going to feel pretty bizarre for a few hours, but you're not going to pass away. There are little or no THC receptors.
Some say good.
Are there any specific medical conditions where attempting to use cannabis to deal with it can actually be detrimental?
Yeah, the two diagnoses that I worry about most in my patients are certainly the top of that list is schizophrenia. And with schizophrenia, there's no great studies. I just read a paper. I read a review of a paper just last week that they looked at schizophrenia, and they found that many of the patients reported relief of symptoms by using cannabis. However, THC and schizophrenia, in my mind, from what I've read, don't go really well together unless you're talking about really low doses, predominantly indica, or best mixed with CBD. So if I have a patient with schizophrenia, I will put them on a concentrate restriction, and I don't restrict my patients. So we have a group in the Lehigh Valley that puts flower restrictions on all their patients. So when they come for a renewal, they come see me.
Right.
Because they don't understand it, and it's the lawyers. But when I have a patient who's under the age of 21, I'll put them on a concentrate restriction because high dose THC is not good for your brain at that age.
No.
And if I have a patient with what's that?
That mind is still developing for a few more years when you're a 21-year-old.
Yes, yes, it is.
Dr. Harris, you can, like, I know my kids are both, well, my daughter's 23, so she can do whatever she wants, but my son is 18. He technically can get a card. I heard that. But you can put a restriction on it here in Pennsylvania?
Oh, yes. And I do. Any of my teenage patients, and it's a little hard making that transition from 17 years to 18 years. They go from having no card to getting their own card, and the parents are going like, I don't want him going to the dispensary and buying shatter and butter and all the 92% concentrated THC. And I said, well, there's two ways to deal with that. Number one, I'm going to put a concentrate restriction on him anyway. And number two, continue to get your caregiver card so you can go to the dispensary together, which is a great experience anyway.
Do you do caregiver card?
No, actually, you don't need a physician for a caregiver card. You can sign up for that in Pennsylvania's system. You just sign up. You have to have a criminal background check and pay them $50 for your card every year. But I'm pretty much out of the loop as far as the caregiver cards. I advise a lot of our patients on how to sign up for it.
Yeah, Mississippi has to get hers. There's times when I got the gout and I can't walk.
Yeah, exactly. And your wife could get a caregiver card and go to the dispensary for you. She just needs to go to the. It's basically a matter of going to the Pennsylvania website, medicalmarijuana.pa.gov.
Card normally.
What's that?
Where I pay for my card normally.
Yes.
Okay.
And then she'd have to register as a caregiver, and then once she gets her background check finished and pays her $50 and gets her card, then to go back on your portal and add her as a caregiver. It's not too difficult.
Okay, that's awesome.
But the other condition that Dr. High was asking about, conditions that I'm concerned about, the other one is bipolar manic. So there's about, I think, 3 different types of bipolar disorder. But my patients that have bipolar and have manic episodes, I worry about them as well. And I'll put them on a concentrate restriction and talk to them quite frankly about avoiding sativas, especially the higher THC sativas. And generally they do pretty well if they follow those recommendations. Now, to talk about cannabis and schizophrenia, what most physicians don't know, and probably very few patients know, is that a very effective treatment for schizophrenia, as effective as the current medications, which are called type 2 atypical antipsychotics, I'm going to draw a blank on it, of course.
That's okay. You draw a blank all the time.
Just as effective as those medications for schizophrenia is CBD. And I was amazed. There was 2 very good studies out of Germany where they treated inpatient schizophrenics, one group with a second generation type 2 antipsychotic versus CBD at very high doses. And the results were identical, except that CBD didn't have any of the side effects that the antipsychotic medication. What's that?
I was just going to say, we're talking about medications like Seroquel and things like that? Or?
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So The main side effects of Seroquel and the other antidepressants, antipsychotics of that class are weight gain, gynecomastia, which is where men get breasts, and movement disorders, tics and spasms and such. Well, CBD doesn't cause any of those.
Right.
So here's
As
a
a matter of fact,
medicine.
don't keep away ticks and spasms, correct?
Yes, that's right.
So it's the
So
opposite.
here's a medicine that's quite benign, and has had very amazing results in treating a very difficult, illness to treat, and it's very successful, and no one knows about it. I've never heard of a psychiatrist recommend to his schizophrenic patient, well, I think you should try high dose CBD since you're having side effects from these other things. There may be a
When you're
few
talking
doctors that do that, but none that I know of.
When you're speaking about high dose CBD, how many milligrams are you talking per day or per dose?
So 3 doses a day, and each dose between 200 and 300 milligrams.
So that is very high dose.
Yes, it
For
is.
sure. Yeah, it is. But of course, there's no high that comes with it. There's no issues of that nature with CBD. And has there been any type of side effect ever determined related to CBD use?
So some people, probably about a third of patients, get drowsy when they take CBD, and in autistic kids, and we see quite a few, about 15% of the autistic kids don't tolerate CBD very well. Excuse me,
It
especially
increases their symptoms, or
yeah, it makes them more anxious, more irritated, and more agitated. And it's basically at low dose. And strangely enough, if you just raise that dose of CBD, in most cases that just goes away. So, but that's a difficult leap of faith for parents to take.
well, that's it, right?
Yeah.
I
Here's a
was
med-
sorry. I was just going to say I had the fortune of for about 2 years helping match patients to doctors who would consult with them, and if they felt it was required, issue them a prescription for medical cannabis here in Canada. I sat in on every conference, close to 100 patients with the doctors. I absorbed a lot. One day I had a nurse come to me who had a 12-year-old son who had rage disorder. He was autistic. And she wanted to explore the potential of cannabis for him. But unfortunately, no doctor would address it at all because of the child's age. Is there ever an occasion you think that it's acceptable to look at cannabis medication for younger people like that?
How much time do we have?
Oh, we usually run 2 hours, so we have time. It's really about how much time do you have?
Because I can go on for several hours about cannabis and kids.
Oh, we do.
So, when I mentioned earlier about, patients calling us and having trouble finding a doctor that would recommend the medical marijuana, the parents, and usually moms, sometimes dads, but mostly moms, many times would get a hold of us, and still, after a long search, and they're desperate, to try this because they've seen some things on the internet and social media, about kids that have had good results. We opened our office, and we had the cutest little office. It was literally a little log cabin out in the country in the Lehigh Valley. It was wonderful. And we opened that January 2018, and the patients, were trickling in. But within a couple of weeks, we saw a kid. We had 2 parents bring their child in who had autism. And it was on our list, and they said, will you, certify our child, for the medical marijuana program? And I figured since it was on the list, it had to be okay. Somebody must have looked at it. So I said, okay, we'll do the certification. And then we got a few more appointments for some more kids because word gets out. And I was rather, I don't know if frantic is the right word or desperate, but I was really looking, searching for articles that might help me justify, recommending marijuana for kids because, the legend is that it's that it causes schizophrenia. So if you have a kid in their mid-teens who's a heavy marijuana user, their likelihood that by their early 20s they'll be diagnosed with schizophrenia goes up. And depending on the survey, anywhere from twice the incidence to 4 times the incidence of schizophrenia. And certainly I don't want to be certainly I don't want to treat a bunch of kids with autism and have them end up with schizophrenia, but probably most of those studies are skewed. I found one good study that did a really deep dive in the literature, and it said the incidence of schizophrenia goes from about 1% to about 1.5% in for heavy users of marijuana in their teenage years. So that's not a tremendous increase, but you don't like to see any increase at all. The proponents of marijuana would say that these teenagers who are using lots of cannabis are already having symptoms of schizophrenia. They're already uncomfortable in their own brain, and the THC helps to calm that. And it helps up to a point until they hit their early 20s, which is when schizophrenia usually rears its ugly head. And then the schizophrenia gets the best of them, and they're off to the psychiatric hospital and end up on the antipsychotic medications.
Right.
So, the causality hasn't really been shown. Although there have been some good studies that show how THC kind of restructures the architecture of the brain that could lead to schizophrenia. But I have to tell you that my kids that I approve for autism, they all have autism. So their incidence of autism is 100%. And far and away, the kids that we see with autism have profound autism. So these kids, most of our kids are nonverbal, or if they are verbal, they have maybe 4 or 5 or 6 words, but they don't use them appropriately. They don't know. In other words, they can't say milk when they're thirsty for milk. They might say milk if they see a cat run across the yard. Many of them have self-injurious behaviors, and I can't imagine anything more horrifying for a patient of a 6-year-old than to watch them throw a major tantrum 8 or 10 or 20 times a day, where they just bang their head on the floor over and over and over with no apparent trigger. And it's like, where did that come from? What need am I not fulfilling? What stimulus triggered that? How can I keep my kid from having these meltdowns and biting his hand until it's bleeding and raw and scarred, or hitting his head, or smacking himself in the face over and over again? What is causing all of that, and how can we get it to stop?
How brutal for a parent.
The way to get that to stop is medical marijuana. And we've had tremendous success with so many of our patients that's been pretty miraculous. So, when you look at the biochemistry of it and the neurodevelopmental biology and how nerves are formed and synapses and, the chemical, what goes on there and the inflammatory changes that go on in brain, there's lots of studies that give us a glimpse, but very little in the way of hard evidence.
So is that basically what the endocannabinoid system is? Is a series of synapses in the body, and by introducing THC and CBD, you're causing the chemicals to be able to move across them and stimulate the system? Is that a simple way to describe it?
Yeah, it is, but THC is more often an inhibitory chemical. So when it sits on the CB1 receptors, in many cases, it actually slows the release of the neurotransmitters. So especially when you're talking about excitatory neurotransmitters like glutamate and norepinephrine, if you're already jazzed up with a lot of glutamate in the frontal lobes and norepinephrine in the midbrain, maybe, THC slows that down, and helps to restore balance. So we have a lot of kids that are agitated, that can't sit still, they don't socialize with their parents or their other family members, and they get started on products that are mostly CBD, but a little bit of THC also. And now they're able to sit through. I mean, I get emails from mothers saying, my son sat through dinner, first time ever. He's 8 years old. We got an email from a dad one time who said, well, you certified my son. We got him started on the medical marijuana, and my wife was crying all night last night because for the first time at age 12, he sat with the family, sat still through an entire Disney movie with the rest of the family and enjoyed himself. So there are imbalances there that need to be brought back into balance that CBD and THC can do. There's a lot of inflammation in many of the conditions that we treat: fibromyalgia, Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, rheumatoid arthritis. Those are all inflammatory diseases. Well, autism has a very big inflammatory component, and cannabis is a very good anti-inflammatory, especially for the brain. So it works on a variety of mechanisms to help calm down the hyperstimulation and restore balance to pathways that need to be back in balance again, and to calm down the inflammation. I mean, when I see these kids in the office and they're so agitated and so restless, I just think of their little brains being just smoldering, just on the edge almost on the edge of having a seizure. Just, they're just like this. And the cannabis really calms that down.
Would that be the reason that they're saying that there's potential for cannabis when you're talking about ADD and ADHD also? Because it has the ability to slow the mind down, or?
Yes, I've not really looked into that a lot. I think there's a lot of potential there. The sativas probably can help quite a bit with adult depression. Again, you have to be cautious that you don't go too high on the dose and trigger anxiety and paranoia. But probably through a similar pathway, you could probably help kids with ADHD as well, because adults who use sativas tell me that it helps them stay focused on the task that they need to stay focused on during the daytime. Just low dose sativa, and I'm just able to focus. The rest of that crap that's always invading my thoughts is just, put at bay for a while, and let's just stay focused. That's, in a simplification, probably what the stimulants do to the dopamine system. The patients with ADHD are prescribed speed pretty much.
Yes, exactly.
And it burns out all the dopamine, so you're not left with very much of it, and helps with the symptoms.
So that's what it does. It actually causes your body to expel it all at one time, and then it takes time to regenerate. I didn't realize that was the intent behind it. But
yeah, I know it. When I read that about a dozen years ago, and I'm going like, well, that's an interesting approach to neurobiology.
That's right. So, in your opinion, how important is the endocannabinoid system in regulating other systems within the body?
A lot. Yeah, a lot. We have the CB1 receptors on all the nerves, and every part of your body is innervated. The GI system, where we see so much in the way of Crohn's and ulcerative colitis and even irritable bowel syndrome. I read a report that 40% of patients who go see gastroenterologists go see them because of irritable bowel syndrome, which is a syndrome of recurrent abdominal cramps and pains and usually lots of diarrhea. But there's two major nerve plexes that surround the intestines. Auerbach's plexus is one of them, and I forget who the other one is named after. but THC is going to act directly on all of those, nerve cells throughout all of those nervous plexes to help calm things down. And we've seen some amazing results with our patients with inflammatory bowel disease, including ulcerative colitis and Crohn's and irritable bowel syndrome.
So,
So that's just the GI system.
right.
I read a report recently. There was apparently a paper in 2012 that showed that people that use cannabis on a regular basis have half the incidence of type 2 diabetes.
Really?
Now, that should be a billboard on every highway. Um, that's huge. How do we reduce, type 2 diabetes, which is a major killer of people and debilitator? How do we cut that in half? Well, maybe instead of having 3 or 4 glasses of wine after dinner, you have a little THC instead, maybe a little CBD during the day, and it reduces your chance of diabetes. It cuts it in half. That's astounding. And that
Type
was
2
published.
diabetes
What's it type?
is more of a lifestyle type thing that you're not necessarily predisposed to unless your lifestyle is one that causes it to happen. Is that how type 2 diabetes
Well,
occurs?
I think there's a pretty good genetic component, but yes, it's a lot of it is lifestyle. And I started getting a glimpse of this in our patients at the 1-year follow-up when I used to ask my patients, are you having any side effects from your medical marijuana therapy? And I would have my diabetic patients say, well, yeah, I'm having a side effect that my hemoglobin A1C is a lot lower, and my doctor's thinking about taking me off of metformin now. So that was kind of a glimpse at that. And then I don't remember where I was reading. I think it was Marijuana Moment. That's a really good daily newsletter online.
I
That's
received
chocked, chocked full of really good information. And they have a scientific portion where they'll talk about some of the latest research. And it said there was a study out of Iran, strangely enough. They did a meta-analysis and found these papers and said, well, gosh, yeah, that's, if you're using cannabis on a regular basis, your chance of developing type 2 diabetes is half.
Isn't that something?
Half. That's just stunning.
Have you found anything along your research that shows that if somebody's a lifelong cannabis user, especially when they come into being older, like we are, our generation more so, from 50 and up or whatever it is. Well, I'm just curious whether somebody who's used cannabis all their lives can still receive the same benefit later in life from including it, or because I've seen something say that using cannabis for a really long time is actually detrimental. Like having 50 years of cannabis use or whatever.
So, I do have a significant number of patients who are my generation, our generation, and have been using for years, decades, and mostly they come see me to get legal.
Okay.
So they'll have their card and they can get a good, reliable source of cannabis. That, street weed, you always have to worry about, what else is in it.
Yes.
As an ER doctor, you would not believe the crap that I've seen in street weed. It's just
Really?
it's mind blowing. But putting that aside, to get to your question, I don't know. We have a significant number of patients, and I guess I can just refer to them as really old hippies,
Mm-hmm.
and they're doing great. They're
So
doing great.
the inclusion of cannabis in your lifestyle for just the purposes of general wellness, there could be some evidence that is a good thing.
Yeah, I've not seen any long-term studies. I would take them with a large grain of salt, because most studies done in the United States, in order to get federal funding, you had to tell the regulators that your goal was to show how bad cannabis is.
Yes.
So if your goal was to show how good cannabis is, you wouldn't get any funding. You wouldn't even get permission to do the study. We passed legislation this past fall that said, basically it told the FDA and the CDC and the DEA, basically it said, stop doing that. But there's no evidence that they've stopped. So we'll see how that plays out. Probably the best example of that was a study on PTSD that was published a couple of years ago. Dr. Sue Sicily from Arizona. She ended up suing, I think it was the FDA, maybe the NIDA, the National Institute on Drug Abuse.
Yep.
Which is a misleading name. They're against it, in case you didn't, they're against drug abuse, although the name of their organization is the National Institute on Drug Abuse. But I think she sued everybody because they just would not give her permission. She had to get permission from all three before she could do her study. And it took her, I believe it was 8 years or 10 years. And then and this was in veterans. And then when she did her study, she had financial backing from a grower in Colorado. They were willing to supply her with wonderful marijuana, exactly what you would need for PTSD. Instead, she had to use marijuana from the University of Mississippi. It was the only approved federal grower at the time. And their grow facility is pathetic. At least it was a couple of years ago. I saw a special Dr. He's the TV doctor that did Weed 1, Weed 2, Weed 3, Weed 4. Dr. Sanjay Gupta. And I think on Weed 4 or Weed 5, he did a tour of the facility there, and it was appalling. I've had the opportunity to tour 3 different grow facilities, and they're just fascinating. It's just a wonderful experience. Seeing all the plants in the different phases and the way that they treat them so lovingly, and manage their the humidity, the temperature, the wind movement through the facility. The lighting, of course, is extremely important, and the different grow phases and maturation phases that they put the plants through. And then you look at the facility from the University of Mississippi, and you're just going like, that's embarrassing. So I spoke with her after she published her report. She didn't have as good a results as she had hoped she would get, and she said it's because the marijuana they supplied her with was really suboptimal. I mean, when I think about doing a study for veterans and PTSD, if all I had was sativa, your results are going to be horrid. If all you have is indica, your results are going to be pretty darn good. If you have indica for nighttime and balanced THC CBD during the day, you're going to change a lot of people's lives that way. And your results are just going to be eye-popping. Who are you going to get to fund that study? No one that I know of. What government agency is going to approve that study? No one that I know of. So you just have to do it on your own and just
That's the problem, right? Is that nobody will allow these studies to go forward. Nobody will fund these studies. So they're restricting the potential by not allowing proper access to universities and different areas to study. Because I think a lot of what you see now, the trials are not so much clinical as observational, right? And a lot of the papers that you see.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I listened in University of California, San Diego. They're doing a study on CBD and autism, and I listened into they have something called UCTV, University of California TV. It's really kind of fascinating. You get to see some really great lectures there. But the lead scientist gave a presentation. They haven't published their results yet, but they're still collating their data. And she said, we're using Epidiolex, which is the CBD product from Great Britain. And she said, and I think there's some, it's CBD, and I think there's some THC in there. And it was 2016 or 2017 when they first proposed that. Here it is, 2023. They've just finished gathering their data. It may be another year or so before they publish. Okay. I mean, how many kids have been diagnosed with autism over the past 7 years? tens of thousands of kids.
Right.
And they're doing a study that's already been done. In Israel, they did a double-blind placebo-controlled study that showed that that the full-spectrum THC CBD at a 20-to-1 ratio, 50% of the kids had moderate to better than moderate improvement of their autism symptoms. So
That's perfect. Hippie, can you ask a question for that? I got to excuse myself for 1 minute.
Sure. I can't hear you. I think your sound is turned off or my sound is turned off.
Yes.
Oh, there we are.
Sorry, my bad. I don't know how the mute came on. Anyway.
Well, Dr. High has some great questions.
Oh, he's amazing.
Yeah.
He's amazing. I love him. Anyway, I wanted to ask you about my friend Lori. Her mom, I'm pretty sure, has rheumatoid arthritis, but she's an older woman, and she's totally against that marijuana thing, you know? So I was hoping that maybe she said her mom's gonna watch this later when she gets home. Just give her some examples of whatever, you know. She needs to know the bombs, the lotions, anything.
Yes, it's very difficult with the older patients, my age, my generation, and the next generation above, because
I feel like all of us, because we were pounded in our heads that it was bad. So anybody from my age and up have always had that, you know, it's been bad. And so they have to get through to these people, especially the older folks, that it's not bad and it's medicine and it can help you.
it is difficult. And I'll have people call me with exactly that scenario. My dad, my mom, they would really benefit from this. How do I convince them to take a look at it? And one of the things I recommend is to find those specials that were done by Dr. Gupta. He's a well-known, well-respected doctor, and he was completely against the medical marijuana when it started coming out, until his viewers started kind of pounding him and saying, Dr. Gupta, please look at the scientific evidence. Look at the evidence. Look at the data. There's not a lot of it, but by gosh, in California and Colorado, we're having some great results.
Yeah.
So
the only issue I see there is blue and red. And, you know, Google's on CNN, so all your red friends are not going to watch you. They don't believe anything he says. Because if you remember during COVID, he was one of the people telling everybody to do all the stuff. And a lot of people didn't like him.
Yeah, I understand. Nonetheless, his specials were really quite well done. And he started off with weed one was the kid out in Colorado with Charlotte Figge, and he did a very good coverage of her and that journey. 2, 3, 4, and 5. I don't remember specifically, but he covered a lot of territory and did it really well. 6 just came out a year and a half ago, and it was on autism. And he didn't take as deep a dive as I would have liked him to, but he still did some very good coverage with that. So so that is a good place to start. As far as, you know, I pretty much only have, you know, stories to tell. In medicine, we call those anecdotes, of course, or case studies. Our oldest patient came to us when he was 92 years old, and I'd like to tell a little joke, if you don't mind.
Go for it.
About half of this is true, and the rest of it's just a joke. So we have this guy. He's 92, and he comes in for his 1-year follow-up, and his daughter brings him in, and he's sitting there talking with me, and his daughter's sitting next to him, and I asked him how the medical marijuana has been doing for his pain, and he said, "Oh, it's been great. It's been great. I thought I'd have to stay in the recliner for the rest of my life. Now I can get up and about more easily." Said, "I'm even able to go to church on Sundays now. I can sit through service and get up and about using my walker a lot more easily. It's just been really amazing." And I said, well, that's just great. Have you had any adverse effects or any side effects from it? And he said, well, yes. He said there was one strain, and it seemed to give me some memory difficulties. And I said, oh, that's not terribly unusual, but just for one strain, what was that strain? And he goes, well, the strain. He said, there's a flower, and it's red. It's not always red, but sometimes it's red, and it has thorns on the stem. And I said, you mean a rose? He goes, yeah, that's it. And he turns to his daughter and he says, Rose, what's the name of that strain that makes me lose my memory?
Oh, that's good.
Now, there were some interesting studies done in Israel with low dose THC and Alzheimer's, correct?
I don't know anything out of Israel. In Switzerland, they did 2 studies. It was from the same population. And it was, just a low, I think it was a 5 milligram. They put it on a cookie. And it was a home for demented women. And a lot of the women would just wander the hallways screaming and crying and just, very distraught, causing a lot of disturbance with the other patients. And I think they took 20 of them and put them on a marijuana cookie. I think it was just either once a day or twice a day, and had some pretty amazing results, as you might imagine. Pennsylvania doesn't list dementia as a qualifying medical condition, but it does say neurodegenerative disorders, and dementia would certainly fit within that category. Right. We only have one patient with dementia in our practice, and that was just recent, so I don't even have a 1-year follow-up. But certainly for families who want to keep dad at home longer, rather than putting them in an institution, or mom, when she starts getting very forgetful, or dad starts, getting agitated. And sundown syndrome is one of the worst things about dementia, where they, night is day and day is night. So they're up all night agitated and walking around the house and getting upset. And during the daytime, they're napping most of the time. THC could potentially have a great effect in turning that around, getting a good night's sleep, being less agitated during the daytime, without that huge fog that the antipsychotic medications, produce. To sedate somebody with, agitation from dementia, to sedate them with an antipsychotic, you're pretty much confining them into their couch or their, recliner for the rest of the day. With marijuana, as you guys understand, you can titrate that dose to where you can get, reduce the agitation without over sedation, depending on the strain and the product and the strength and such. So that's an area where I think we could have tremendous improvement. But again, we can't advertise. I can't put up a billboard in Allentown saying, does your family member have dementia? Call me and we'll try them on medical marijuana and see if we can get some amazing results. So it's very frustrating.
Well, when you can, let me know and I'll run a commercial for you every day.
Thank you.
I don't want to get you in trouble.
And if I could use another, so to finish up on my patient, my 92-year-old, so most of that story was true. The part about the rose was from an old joke that I incorporated. But he did say at 1-year follow-up that he was much more mobile, having a lot less pain. He said, Doc, he said, I was against this, and my daughters, God bless them, they made me come see you a year ago. And when I started on the medical marijuana, I would not tell any of my friends. I didn't tell anyone that I was taking marijuana. He said, and now a year later, I tell everybody that I meet.
Dr. Harris, we had a guest on yesterday, and we talked a lot about RSO. What is your feeling, and how do you feel about all that?
It's terribly sticky and it tastes foul.
That answers my question from earlier. Does Dr. Harris partake?
But having said that, it's an incredible medicine.
Right.
So
Well, the lady we had on yesterday
what's
had
that?
the lady we had on yesterday had esophageal cancer. She had a tumor that they couldn't put the stage on, so they put her a stage X on the tumor. She started to, she followed the traditional treatment, but then somebody suggested that she try ours, so she wasn't familiar with it, but she gave it a try. And she's now been 3 years in. So it was a really interesting story to have from her yesterday.
Yep. Yeah, we see that a lot. There's a podcast from a couple in Canada that Canada Health Radio, I think, I forget, and they talk every week to usually cancer patients that are having good results. But again, it's hard getting studies approved here in the U.S. I mean, worldwide, as far as I know, there have been 2 studies on cancer and cannabis. Both of those were done for glioblastoma multiforme, which is a very aggressive type of brain cancer. And both of them had pretty good results in both studies. The first was done out of a group in Spain, University of Madrid. I'm trying to think of the investigators. They've done some great work. What's called preclinical work, so work in animals and on cell lines, and have shown that basically cannabinoids, but especially THC, does not like many forms of cancer. So it attacks them on several levels. Some really, really good work. Sanchez is one of the investigators. I forget the other names, but but what they did in 2008, it's painful to think about. They took about 10 patients or so, and they had glioblastoma multiforme. They'd already been through the initial treatment, which is brain surgery, radiation, and chemo. And then a year, 2 years, maybe 3 years later, there's a recurrence, which is pretty typical. So they treated these patients who had a recurrence. At that point, the traditional therapy is another course of chemotherapy, which is not usually effective, and usually the patients die within about a year. So they took these about a dozen of these patients. They did the usual chemotherapy. In addition to that, they put a catheter into the tumor cavity and infused THC into that. And they followed the patients along, and the patients that got the THC infusions actually had a longer survival. I would say about 50% longer. So typically the patients that didn't get an infusion lived for about 10 months, and the ones that did lived for about 15 months. Don't quote me on that. Those numbers are out of my brain.
But it's an interesting result.
It's an interesting result. GW Pharmaceutical, they're the ones that have Epidiolex approved in the U.S. for treating seizures, uncontrolled seizures in pediatric patients. They did a study about 3 years ago where they took 40 patients with glioblastoma multiforme, pretty much the same situation. They had been treated initially with surgery, radiation, chemotherapy, had a remission for a year, 2 years, maybe 3, and then had a recurrence, and were started back on chemotherapy again. They put them into 2 categories. Half got Sativex, which is a combination of THC and CBD together, and the other half got placebo. And they wrote a white paper initially. A white paper is a scientific paper that never gets published, but just to say here's our results. And the patients that were on the Sativex, and I think it was 35 milligrams of THC a day and 35 milligrams of CBD a day, which if you're trying to treat cancer, that's a really low dose. But still the survival rates were better in the treatment arm, and I think they were significantly longer, like 50% longer survival. So you wonder, what if we added this to the initial therapy? And indeed, the folks in Madrid, in Spain, they did a preliminary proposal. They were going to do that. But then, as far as I know, the last time I looked was about a year ago, and they never really got that underway. But that'd be a great study to do. Again, you'd have to get approval from a bunch of different people, and then find a drug company to sponsor you and such. But glioblastoma multiforme it's a rare brain cancer, but it's not horribly rare. And you know, if these chemicals, the CBD, the THC, can knock that back, if they can help the traditional chemotherapeutics, the radiation, the surgery from the get-go, we might find a cure, or at least a way to dramatically improve the 5-year survival. I have one patient with glioblastoma multiforme who's still alive. He came to me already in treatment. He had had his surgery and chemotherapy about 4 or 5 years earlier. So when he came to see me, he was already stable, and he said, yeah, I've been using weed for a decade now, and he said, I just want to be legal here in Pennsylvania. So we got him his card, and every year I ask him, I'm going like, so what are your images showing on your brain cancer? And he goes, it's not going anywhere. It's not any bigger. It's not any smaller. It just stays where it is, which is pretty remarkable for glioblastoma multiforme. So more power to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because I think most of the conversation around cannabis and cancer is kind of about mitigating the side effects from chemotherapy, correct? The nausea and increasing appetite, and that there's not a great deal of conversation yet on the ability of the compounds found in cannabis that cause like cell apoptosis in tumor development and things like that, correct?
That's correct. And again, it goes back to the notion of trying to do research on cannabis in this country. If you were to apply to the FDA, the DEA, the NIDA, for approval for a study to look at 100 patients with pancreatic cancer, and half of them you're going to put on really high dose of cannabinoids, and the other half, placebo, the answer was automatically no. Because you were trying to show a benefit from cannabis.
Right, and there's such a high mortality rate with pancreatic cancer. There's really not a lot of danger in actually conducting a study of that nature.
So the goal of chemotherapy is to find a chemical that is so caustic that it kills the cancer cells without killing your own native cells. So they haven't found any of those. So basically, it's a race to kill the cancer before you kill the patient, and then that's a success. That's appalling. I mean, they've helped literally millions of people and found some great chemotherapeutic cures for a lot of different cancers. But cannabis doesn't kill patients. Cannabis doesn't have adverse effects to the lining of your stomach like aspirin does. It doesn't hurt your kidneys like ibuprofen does. It doesn't hurt your liver like Tylenol does. It doesn't really have any adverse effects unless you're 15 years old and you're using lots of THC. It's going to change your brain structure some. But for the vast majority of patients with cancer that are over the age of 26, there's no downside to taking a bunch of cannabis, except that it's going to make you feel pretty strange. Once you start getting up around 200-300 milligrams a day, you're going to start feeling some adverse effects from that. But cannabinoids are not going to kill your own natural cells. They just enhance them. But some of the cannabinoids just go right after cancer cells. There's a doctor out in a PhD out in Israel, Dr. Didi Mieri, who's done some incredible research, preclinical, mostly culture tissues and test tubes and dishes, showing what combinations of cannabinoids fight which cancers. He published a paper about 2 years ago. It was really hard to decipher, but when you drill down to it and you look at, if I had a patient come to me with glioblastoma multiforme, I would say, so let's try you on fairly high doses of THC, CBD, and CBG because of the results of this paper that Dr. Mieri did. But again, he only tried it against about 12 different cancer lines. But you get glimpses into things like uh, two of the cell lines were breast cancer. And there are several different types of breast cancer. The effects of the cannabinoids against the ER positive were pretty good. I'm sorry, the triple negative were pretty good, but the breast cancer line that was ER positive, it didn't do very well against. So, to have those kind of insights into different kinds of cancer and the different cannabinoids that can fight that, we have the technology now. We just don't have the backing. To do those studies requires tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. The only one that can afford to do that's the federal government or the pharmaceutical companies, and neither of them are interested.
Well, the pharmaceutical industry probably because it could end up impacting their ability to make profits off certain medications in the future.
Well, yeah, it's very difficult for them to, they'll say, well, we found this strain that cures pancreas cancer, and the patients are going to start growing it in their backyard.
Yeah, and that will not do.
So they're not going to invest $100 million into that study if they can't patent something and say we have this unique, chemical, and the FDA is going to say, well, that's not unique. You just took, CBG from this plant and THC from that plant and CBD from that plant, and you mixed them together. That's not a new chemical. It's just a mixture.
Right. I'm curious as to how you think about THC versus THCA, CBD versus THCA. Will they both have the same effect the same medical effect on an individual? I know you can bypass the high with THCA, but will it be as effective if somebody doesn't want to have the high associated with THC to utilize THCA instead?
No, THCA is a completely different chemical. The acid form, doesn't react with probably. I don't think it even reacts with the CB1 receptors. Probably not the CB2 receptors. It has some good anti-inflammatory effects, especially for the GI system, and anti-nausea. Again, my time is taken up looking at the effects of THC and CBD, so I haven't really, taken a deep dive into THCA. One of the greatest proponents of that is, again, Dr. Dustin Sulak, and his website, healer.com. He even talks about brewing up a little herbal tea using a bud where you're going to get THCA. And for some of my patients with GI symptoms who can't use THC in the morning because they have to drive and go to work and such, I'll recommend to them, well, start off your day, just take a pinch about the size of a pea off of some bud, put that in a cup, pour hot water, let it steep for a good 5 to 10 minutes or so, and then drink that. You won't get high, but you're going to get the effects from THCA. So basically, you're making a cannabis tea that's high in THCA, which has some good anti-inflammatory and GI and anti-nausea effects.
There is some therapeutic use for it.
Oh yeah, and everything I learned by listening to Dr. Sulak and going to his website. I love listening to him lecture. He does a free webinar once a month, and it's it's free. You just sign up through healer.com, and he generally picks a topic and reviews about 3 or 4 scientific articles covering that topic, and he brings his vast knowledge. And just a really great lecturer, speaker, nice guy. I mean, I've seen him and met him at conferences and stuff. And one of his webinars, he let me present my preliminary data on our autistic kids. So that was nice of him to do that. So nice. So again, I spend most of my time researching THC and CBD. So I don't know as much about THCA. I know hardly anything about CBDA. but it is available online. I think Dr. Sulak has a line of CBDA that he sells. He started getting into production about a year ago. But there are some good properties there, and I do recommend THCA in that method by brewing up some herbal tea in the morning and starting off your day.
Yeah, actually, when I was in the conferences, patient doctor conferences here in Canada, there were a couple of instances where the doctor actually suggested that they juice cannabis to prepare a juice in the morning and just include a bud of cannabis inside of that juice, which would give them THCA. The same way, right? Because there's no heating process going on. You have a very small amount of THC, but there's a conversion yet. So, especially with fresh plant material. So,
yeah, I'd never heard of that approach, but yes, you would get THCA that way.
Yeah. It's very interesting. It was something that I was looking at exploring. Because you can buy almost all these compounds now as isolates and distillates, and you can source terpenes and all these sort of things. I'm just wondering if there's a way to custom design preparation now, like nano-emulsified preparations that mimic specific strains, so people could actually make these preparations themselves at home at a fraction of the cost of the cost of little dispensaries, by simply being able to obtain a statistical analysis of the specific strain and doing the recombination themselves. Is that something you've ever considered or thought about? Or?
So I've given it some thought, but I've not done a deep dive into it. Again, looking at terpenes, which are fascinating. I've not really done much searching into the exact mechanism of action of the terpenes. How does the addition of myrcene make this strain an indica? Although I read one thing that said that it opens up the blood-brain barrier to the THC and makes it more available, but there's got to be more to it than that. Why are strains that are rich in pinene, why are those awakening, refreshing, alerting, mood lifting, and limonene too? And then I'll look at some really good indicas, and I'm going like, well, there's quite a bit of limonene in there. How can that be? But it is an entire science, and finding that right combination. I have more than a handful of patients that are real terpene shoppers. So they'll look at a strain, and one of the advantages of the program in Pennsylvania is that all of the products are labeled, so they have to test for the major cannabinoids, of course, and minor cannabinoids, usually about 4 or 5 or 6 of the minor cannabinoids, CBG and CBN and THCV, but also the terpene profile. It's got to be right on the label. So in Pennsylvania, you can do that pretty easily. In other states, that's not necessarily the case. In some states, it's really difficult if you walk into a dispensary and say, what's a nice indica, and they'll say, OG Kush, and well, what's the terpene profile? And well, we don't know. It's got this much THC in it, though. And you're going like, well, that's nice, but how about myrcene? How about beta caryophyllene? They're going like, I don't know. You'll have to send it to a lab or something to figure that out.
Yeah, which are super important. And the beauty of terpenes is that they can be found in other places in nature. So there has been studies on particular terpenes and their potential benefits. So they are an important component. They probably were considered to your THC and CBD and the entourage. It could be, all part of that. So I think it is a really important component.
So David, what you mentioned was very interesting, and I think there's a lot of potential there. But for some reason, the plant just knows better.
Yeah.
It just seems to me that the plant knows better, and the cartridges are really convenient, and they're just wonderful. They're discreet. It's fine to dial in on the strains and stuff. but there's no substitute for the flower, I don't think. And I encourage my patients to vape the flower. In Pennsylvania, we're not supposed to smoke flower. I'm sure that the majority of my patients that use flower smoke it, but I encourage it to vape it. My patients to vape
Not
it.
me. I follow every rule.
Except you hate the vaping. But yeah, no, it's really. I mean, there's no reason to bust the plant material. There's no benefit in actually burning the leaf itself. As long as you get to an appropriate temperature, which you can skip all the beneficial,
Right.
there's no reason to smoke.
Yeah, and I'm in complete agreement with that. And so I do encourage my patients to vape the flower. I think it's the best of both worlds. There's certainly a lot of great uses for cartridges, for the vape cartridges. There's plenty of patients that get a lot of relief from smoking the flower. And it's not like cigarette smoke where you're smoking 20 to 40 times a day, going through a whole cigarette, so you're getting all the tar and the carbon monoxide and all that. It's a much smaller dose of that. But if you vape it, you lose the rest of that. So you're still getting most of the cannabinoids and most of the terpenes. Yeah.
I have a question.
Fire.
What do you think? I heard there's a bill on the table that we're going to be able to grow in PA.
Yeah. So bills keep coming through, getting proposed in the PA, either the House or the Senate, and they never go anywhere. So there's two right now. Every year there's at least one. There's two right now. One of them is really odd. It says you don't need a serious qualifying medical condition. Any medical condition at all will qualify you. I'm going like, so if a patient comes and says, I have toenail fungus, I want to get a card, I'm going to say, sure, why not?
Hey, by the way,
you're restricted to everything but topicals.
It's not working on this one.
And the other part is that you don't need to renew your card, which would be great for a lot of my patients. They're going like, well, great, I don't have to see Dr. Harris and pay him $100 every year to get my new card. But you lose that medical aspect of it to where, how are you doing? What are you using? I can't tell you how many people I say, that I see, they're going like, well, I'll say, well, how's your sleep? Because that was an issue. They're going like, well, I sleep for 2 or 3 hours and then the rest of the night's shit. I'm going like, so what are you using? Oh, vape. I'm vape at bedtime. I'm going like, yeah, 2 or 3 hours. That's all you're going to get. How about the tincture? How about the capsules? They're going to give you 5, 6 hours, maybe even 8 hours of sleep. And the attitude is, well, that's not real marijuana. And I'm going like, well, it's real medical marijuana. So add a capsule at bedtime. It's not going to hurt you any. Maybe you'll get 6 hours of sleep instead of 2. So you lose that part of it. Basically, you just get a card for any medical reason whatsoever, and then you don't have to talk to a doctor again. And again, I have a lot of patients that would do just fine with that. But it really doesn't make it a medical program anymore. I think part of that bill has the grow, allows patients to grow their own. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I heard about
there's a second bill that's been proposed, I think, in the House that would it's basically an adult use or recreational. But we get that every year and it never goes anywhere. Now, this year, the Pennsylvania House is evenly split, Democrats and Republicans. I think the Democrats are supposed to have one extra, so they might get something passed. But the Senate still has a majority of Republicans. And as you mentioned earlier, the red and the blue divide on marijuana is just appalling.
It's crazy because we all smoke it, but we're gonna. Well, it's not us. It's the jackasses of the government.
In Canada, for a medical patient, if you're prescribed cannabis and you wish to do your own cultivation, the government actually allows you to grow strange number, but 4.9 plants per gram per day. So if you have a prescription for 1 gram a day, you're allowed to grow 4.9 plants. At all times. I actually ran a cultivation facility for 2 years that provided medicine to 4 patients. And that was a total of 615 plants. for 4 individuals that we were able to cultivate legally in that facility. So it's pretty good like that because you actually end up with an excess of medication. I don't know anybody who's able to consume their entire production.
Right.
But at least they had access to it as they needed it, which is the most important thing, right? And the economics is good.
It is, and Arizona, when they passed their medical bill, it was very interesting because Arizona is all spread out. I lived in Tucson for a long time, but there's a lot of communities that are a long way from dispensaries. And they picked like a number, like 60 miles. If you live more than 60 miles from a dispensary, you can grow your own. I'm going like, well, that's just brilliant.
There's been a mass migration to the desert.
The population of Phoenix dropped by 10% in all the surrounding areas.
Yeah,
And
but
all the irrigation companies were
temperature. Oh, I don't know how they can grow anything.
Is there any kind of timeline you can envision for medical cannabis to become more mainstream? Like 20 years or 10 years, or is there anything you can envision that'll see that progression to the point where it becomes normalized?
Well, reasonably speaking, tomorrow would be good.
Yes, absolutely.
I agree.
But you know, on the federal level, the pace is just glacial, and it's hard to get anything done whatsoever. I follow a few things there. Last fall was the banking bill in the United States. The cannabis companies have a lot of trouble accessing banks because of the concern about money laundering and illegal moneying. So it's hard to let a legitimate cannabis company access banks without letting the cartels access banks and to launder their money and such. But there is a reasonable banking bill that made it through the House and was in the Senate, and it was a timeline. It was a time crunch. It was coming down to December. The Senate only had a few sessions left, and the head of the Senate kept saying, "We're going to bring this bill in. We're going to bring this bill. We're going to get it passed. We have the votes." And the stock prices of the American cannabis companies were going up and up and up and up and up. And then it came down to it, and he couldn't get it attached to anything. And the Republicans were saying, "You can put it up, but you don't have the votes for it." And so it never even got presented for a vote. And all of the American cannabis companies, their stocks dropped by 50% or more.
Oh, I believe it.
So, and that's just a banking bill. I mean, that's, no one's getting high, but you're allowing cannabis companies to make a better profit.
And licensed companies.
Yeah, licensed companies, that's
if
right.
they're responsible enough to gain a license from the jurisdiction in which they operate, it would be natural to assume that they're responsible enough to conduct their banking in a proper way.
Yeah,
So
instead of dealing with so much cash, which is difficult, it's
dangerous.
Yeah, and dangerous.
In this day and age, right, where the economy is what it is, and people are struggling, places that have a lot of cash are potentially.
Well, it is 2:05, and I'm sure Dr. Harris has patience.
Yes.
I can't thank you enough, Dr. Harris.
Yeah, it's been a great day.
I'm going to let him.
How did I do?
You did great.
This was great.
I had a lot of fun. I'm so sad that it was so echoey.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know. Apparently something with my setup.
I don't know. I don't know. It's something about maybe a stage being open. I give up.
I don't know either, but I enjoyed it. It's a topic that I'm passionate about, and we keep trying to congratulations to you guys, pushing back the darkness a little bit and trying to spread the good news, to get some good information out there, and raise the awareness in people that otherwise might not have any knowledge of this. The internet is such a double-edged sword when it comes to things like this, because there's so much misinformation out there, and it's impossible or very difficult to sort the good from the bad, and to to educate people, and especially caregivers, medical practitioners. It's a challenge, and thank you guys for the good work that you do. Getting the information out as best you can.
Thank you. Yeah, to us, it's very important. That's the reason I started Dr. High, was simply for educational purposes, to help people find the information they need to gain the confidence to speak to their healthcare provider about cannabis. Simply that. It's not my opinion or anything else. I'm trying to provide the straight facts. And for you to come on and spend some time with us is tremendous, because the fact that we actually have a medical practitioner who specializes in the medical cannabis field here just kind of lent some legitimacy to what we're trying to do. And we appreciate that tremendously.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's again, talking about our generation. If a doctor's not telling them, that they're not going to believe it.
Yeah,
but even some doctors. I mean, if Trump ain't telling them, or whoever, Biden ain't telling them, it's weird. Like you have to get over that. I don't know.
Well, we'd love to have you back sometime. If you'd like to come back and join us, it'd be wonderful to have this opportunity to continue this talk on the medical cannabis.
Sure, I'd be delighted. It's a topic I love talking about. I like to keep up to date on it, and any chance to share the news, I'd be happy to do that. Maybe we'll look at a date in September or October to do that.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. It was nice meeting you guys. And next time we do this, David, I want to hear more from you, because I think you probably knew the answers to most of the questions you asked me.
Well, that's the thing. I find it difficult when we're interacting with people, because I have a hard time thinking of the questions that people might want to ask. So it's easier for me to ask somebody else who has insight, right? than to try and think of it myself. But I appreciate that. Thank you.
It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it.
I'm glad. I'm so sad about the echoing. I apologize to everybody. We're going to do this again in September or October. I can't wait. Thank you, everybody, for being here and hanging out. Dr. Harris, I guess I'll see you soon. I don't see you for another year, but I'll talk to you sooner than that, I hope.
We'll be in touch.
All right, sir. Dr. High, have a great day.
Bye, guys. Have a great day.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye. Oh, my
Well,
God.
that
Echo
was awesome.
Yeah, except for the echo, man. Now there's no echo.
Weird, eh? But that's okay, because we got through it. And when Dr. Hirsch was talking, there was no echo.
Yeah, he was good. It was just the questions. I couldn't hear your questions.
I mean, fantastic, right? His knowledge and insight is just amazing.
Oh, he's amazing. And he's a great guy. Like, he's just an overall nice guy. Both of them. His wife is even more amazing. I had so many questions, and I had to behave myself because I couldn't stand hearing my echoing voice. I was like, it's killing me. It's killing me. Anyway, all right. I'm going to tell you, there's not much we can do. We'll try again. Hopefully it'll be better. I want to know the answer to his question. Well, Dr. High can probably answer. There was a couple questions that Dr. High can definitely answer.
And I really apologize to everybody for not paying so much attention to the comments today, because it was a rare
so bad.
And I was just hoping to be able to pull out information from Dr. Harris that people out there listening would have some benefit from hearing, right? So I do apologize. Usually we pay a lot more attention to what's going on in the chat.
Absolutely. Go up to I saw a question that concerned me, and I don't know if she's still here. Carol Ann said, THC or THCA, which one should I use for mental health? And I mean, that's not something.
Well, according to what Dr. Harris said, that the THCA doesn't respond the same way as THC, and has more of a beneficial potential when it comes to dealing with inflammation more so than the mental health side. So the THC would have been what he was talking about when he was talking about for schizophrenics and for autistic people. And we touched a little bit on ADD and ADHD, which he hadn't done much research on or had the opportunity to read a lot of papers on, but suspected the potential benefit could be there for that also. But the THC would be, I think, where you'd want to go there, Caroline.
Yeah. And Kelly wants to know if there's been any studies on pregnancy and women smoking during pregnant. And
Well,
what are Dr. Harris's and I guess your thoughts?
Yeah, I've not read a specific study about THC in pregnancy, but what I've seen is plenty of information about THC in developing minds of children. And this is why there was recommendations that legalization of cannabis wasn't accessible to people. In Canada, you can drink at 19. In some provinces, 18 is a legal age for alcohol. They wanted to set the legal age for cannabis at 21, simply because of the brain development of teenagers and young adults, which they say doesn't complete until the age of 24. So, based upon that supposition, I would think that a fetus as a developing brain would probably not benefit from THC while pregnant, would be just what I would think, right? I don't know scientifically if that's true or not, but the logic seems to follow that it wouldn't be a good thing.
Yeah.
Now,
I would think the same, but I don't know. Who am I?
actually, when my wife and I were first um, wanting to have a child, she was not conceiving as quickly as we wanted her to. So we actually went to go see a specialist about this. And one of the questions we asked him was, what about cannabis use? Could that be interfering with the ability to conceive? And he said, don't worry about cannabis use until you know that you're pregnant, and then stop. Once you know you're pregnant, then discontinue your use. But until that time, he didn't see that there was any issue. And he was actually from Holland. So the Netherlands, where cannabis is more commonly used. So, but that was his advice to us at the time.
Yeah. Yep, Mitchell, we agree. We've been talking about that. Actually, tomorrow we have North Spore coming on, and they're a mushroom company, and they're going to be coming on and talking to us about mushrooms and psilocybin and their kits.
I'm normal. Well, nobody said that you're not normal or that it's going to affect everybody the same way, but that's funny.
She's not normal either.
And smoking cigarettes while pregnant isn't really something that you would advise again about either, really. But yeah, mushrooms would be interesting tomorrow, right? A whole different side of psychedelic medicine we can get into tomorrow. Yep. That's for sure. And maybe that's something we can talk with Dr. Harris about at some point.
If we weren't echoing so bad, I was going to ask him about it, but it was his speaker. Yeah, but he couldn't turn it down, or it wouldn't.
Yeah, I wonder what was causing that. It'd be good to know so that we see it in the future.
Everybody's saying it was his speakers were echoing on us because we have nothing now. We're perfect.
Thank you, Kelly.
Yeah, I'm sure. All right, Dr. High, I got to get out of here. I need to go to sleep. I got a headache.
Okay.
I love you guys.
Great day. Thanks everybody for being with us. It was an excellent day. And if you have any questions from today's show, if you hold them over until tomorrow, we'll address them the best that we can without the doctor's benefit. But
and we might not want to do that with the mushroom guy. He might.
That's right. Yeah.
You're talking about mushrooms, not your damn medical.
And we'll have the fun guy with us tomorrow too, right?
2:16 in the morning in the Philippines. Woo woo! Welcome in, Kelly. Thank you for being here.
Nice. Thanks for being up.
Yeah. All right, dude. I will see you tomorrow.
All right. See you tomorrow at noon. Have a great day.
All right.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good day. Peace.
Peace, everybody. Much love.